Welcome to the Whole Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you become a fat burner, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey, everybody. It's Debbie Potts doing a new episode of the Whole Athlete Podcast. And I have someone that I've been stalking on the show today. I met him I didn't meet you. I listened to him at Paleo FX and saw him at KetoCon and just following him on Instagram. He's the founder of Zone Halo, Shawn Wells, who's got a lot going on, a lot to share with us today. Thanks, Shawn.
Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I'm excited.
Well, let's kind of dive into your story. Along this, we could just talk about this for half the majority of the episode, but talk about what you do. You're a biochemist, a biohacker, keto dietitian for 20 years, but we all have a story why we're doing keto or why we're becoming influencing the world to help them heal. So share your story.
Yeah, I grew up overweight, obese, using junk food as some therapy for getting bullied and playing video games and trying to escape the world as best I could. And I got good grades and I got into a good business school despite the bullying, the depression, and the obesity. And I decided to get into working out and into supplements when I was going to business school. And I was, running in GNCs and reading all the magazines, looking at all the labels and getting super into it. And I went to my doctor to get a physical between my sophomore and junior year when I was at Babson, this business school. And I talked to him about my passion of supplements and wanted to hear his thoughts because, you just assume doctors are just going to blow it off, especially this was 20 years ago. And he drew up this lifeline for me and drew 20 and 80 in hash marks and then drew the line in between and said, why not be happy between here and here? And it devastated me in a good way. I was like, whoa, okay. So that totally changed my life path. This, at that time, there wasn't the entrepreneur influencer, stuff like there is now that where you see all these people getting successful. Successful people to me then were people that worked, quote unquote, in the real world for other people, like doctors, like businessmen, these people. And so a doctor to me was about as high up as it gets in terms of intelligence and success and all the things. So for him to tell me this, to basically give me permission to chase my dreams, it changed everything. So that blew me away, and I finished up business school. I went to UNC Greensboro to a guidance counselor because my parents were down in North Carolina and I could go in state. My dream school was Chapel Hill for nutrition to get my master's. And I needed tons of classes, basically because I was a business student. And I went to this guidance counselor at UNC Greensboro and told him my dream and everything I wanted to do. And he laughed at me and he told me I was a business student and I would fail and I would fail miserably. And then he made fun of my body. And I left there really dejected. I contemplated suicide that night with pills and alcohol. And luckily I did not do that. And I decided to go ahead with all these classes, and I took 26 credit hours a semester, which was insane. And I got straight A's. I put it on my credit card and just went all in. But I thought of this guy every single day and what he said. Luckily it, spurred me in a good way, but I'll tell you what, the power of your words is immense. You don't know, this one doctor, I wouldn't be where I am. I wouldn't be sitting in front of you right now. It wouldn't be the world's greatest formula. I wouldn't be a dietitian. I wouldn't be a biochemist. I wouldn't have accomplished the things I've accomplished. The ingredients I have wouldn't be out there. The lives I've touched, the radio shows, the TV, whatever, all the stuff I've done wouldn't have happened without that one doctor saying, why not be happy between here and here?
Mm-hmm.
And that other guy could have taken away my dream. One, if I listened to him, and then two, I almost killed myself. So it's powerful, your words. But I did get into Chapel Hill, and I did pursue my RD, became a certified sports nutritionist, and eventually a fellow in the ISSN. But during my time at Chapel Hill, I ended up getting very sick with mono/Epstein-Barr and a lot of autoimmune stuff like chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, Hashimoto's. And that's when I discovered keto. That was about 20 years ago, and started doing that. But I did it like on and off because it was hard back then. There wasn't the keto communities and keto recipes and KetoCon and all that. And but it was about 8 years ago that I got very hardcore when I got a pituitary adenoma, a brain tumor. And that changed a lot of things for me, my risk for cancer. And again, I still have the autoimmune stuff. So I got very hardcore with the supplements, the biohacking, the paleo, keto, fasting, all the things. And that's when I really got focused, was about 8 years ago.
And it's funny because I look back on my journey, is like how many years ago, if you started doing low carb, high fat, keto wasn't even, did you call it keto back then? 8 years ago, but when you started 20 years ago, we didn't call it keto. Really, did you back then?
Well, at the time, I didn't know like so much about like gluconeogenesis and all these different things and some of the delineation. I was reading books 20 years ago when I got into it on specifically understanding that term ketogenic diet. But Atkins was actually out around that time, and there was awareness around that. So that helped. But also I was reading a book called The Ketogenic Diet for the Practitioner from Lyle McDonald, and another book called The Body Opus by Dan Duchesne. And The Body Opus was like a bodybuilding book on how to get ripped by using the ketogenic diet, which was completely like off the grid. Like back then, like everyone was like, you need to have broccoli and tilapia and, all those kinds of things when you're getting ready, especially for a contest. And but it was interesting reading both, like for the practitioner and for the bodybuilder, which, I was working out and I was also a registered dietitian. So the ketogenic diet became fascinating for me. And I was reading mostly about epilepsy, type 2 diabetes, and weight loss at that time. And it certainly helped reduce my inflammation and my autoimmune issues, my energy. At that time, we didn't know as much about cancer and Parkinson's and all the other things that are now implicated with the ketogenic diet. But yeah.
So your personal health issues kind of motivated you to study more, and did it lead you to creating more of creating the supplement line and biohacking, just because you're trying to figure out your own health? How am I going to fix myself because no one else can help me?
That's it exactly. And I think that's where like your deepest passions come from, where you find your why is, one, you're trying to fix yourself. And then two, when you're stumbling into that with so much passion and digging through all the things that you can find, then you realize that you can help others and that there's others on the same journey. And it's so empowering to pass along like this knowledge that you've gained. And that's what was happening to me. I was working at GNCs, at different supplement stores. I was obviously working as a dietitian in hospitals and nursing homes. I was on bodybuilding.com message boards, anti-aging message boards. And I was just addicted to not only researching, but helping people. and then people helping me and giving me their opinions on these supplements or this diet, or, the feedback on how it works for them. And I would be looking at their labs and going through their charts, and just all of this was super empowering to me. Just then I was hungry for knowledge and I was hungry to help.
But with this biohacking, I find interesting too, to figure out how to make yourself feel better. But you realize what I keep sharing as well, that it's chronic stress really impacts the whole you. And yes, ketogenic diet is an essential part. First thing we always want to start with, but working on digestion, absorption, is your detoxification pathways working, and all these different things that I think are down the road we have to look at, as well as, start with the nutrition. But, how do you work with people to get, all right, we need to do ketogenic. We are showing all these different diseases can be improved. People lose fat, their brain's healthier, their focus, their longevity. But what else do you find, you talk a lot about what I've been reading about, learning and sharing as well, but what's your personal story, what you share that is to ketogenic diet, and what else do you need to do to really optimize your health?
Well, you know what? I don't even start with the ketogenic diet. Like, I think the ketogenic diet is a couple steps down. I would prefer that people start with eating whole food first. And really trying to get away from ultra processed food, which has bliss point characteristics to it and is engineered by food engineers. And so it triggers dopamine and serotonin. And then there's just so many additives. So it's one, addictive, and two, there's all these harsh chemicals to preserve it, to make it look a certain color, the GMOs, the antibiotics, the artificial sweeteners, colors, flavors, all the things, the hormones, all the things that are in these foods that really shouldn't be there. And so, the rest of the world doesn't necessarily eat quote unquote ketogenic, but they're pretty thin. It's really the advent of ultra processed food that has really caused a lot of the obesity and us being sedentary. I think the ketogenic diet is a cool biohack, as you're just talking about, to help us with metabolic dysfunction and states of insufficient cellular energy. But I think that's the biggest thing is trying to, because look, if someone gets on the ketogenic diet and they're still addicted to ultra processed food, now they can eat ultra processed foods that are keto, or you can have ultra processed foods that are paleo, or you can eat crap on any diet. And if you're eating, if all you're eating on keto is desserty stuff, and dessert / junk food stuff, then that's not really a good way to go about this. I really feel like you need to mentally get off and physiologically get off the processed food. You need to at least start some kind of exercise routine. And I'm not talking, you don't need to go to the gym and high intensity interval training and, do battle ropes for an hour or something, or CrossFit. I'm saying, can you go take a walk for 10 minutes after you eat? Because there's great data showing that helps with insulin sensitivity and glucose translocation. So that can help, just 10 minutes. Can you do that? That's cool. And start with that, and, hydrate a little bit better, and, instill maybe some gratitude or meditation or quiet time during the day. And start there, and then then we can get into more what I consider keto more of a biohack. So I think I want your lifestyle to change on the more basic level, and then we can get into more deeper dives into supplements and diet and whatever. So I think that's the first place I would start. Then you can get into the ketogenic diet.
I totally agree. That's, it's funny. I think that's why I loved your session when I first listened to it at Paleo Effects. That's kind of what I created 5 years ago, and finally starting to focus on building is that holistic method, and how there's 8 elements: nutrition, exercise, sleep, stress, movement, which is mobility, digestion, gut health, and hydration, and happiness, gratitude, playing, being silly. And I keep trying to share that as, share with some of the posts with you, that I think so many people just keep it simple and, start with eating real food. And Sean Croxton said that years ago, just JERF, JERF, just eat real food. And I just think it made it simple for people, teach them how to eat real food. And that's kind of a problem I have with a lot of these people doing keto and all these different groups I got in on Facebook that that dirty keto. It's like, wait a minute, what about your health? You're putting all these toxins and the antibiotics and meats, and you're eating all this stuff into your body. And it's pretty, interesting people's opinion. If it's beneficial, it's better than the alternative. But I think, it's such a toss up. It's like, all right, I'm eating real food, or am I doing dirty versus clean keto, real food?
It's true. Like if you lose a lot of weight, there's certainly a lot of benefit to your body from that. And you can do dirty / lazy keto, and you could do that with paleo, and you can do that with calories in, calories out, right? Like you can lose weight with keto or whatever you want to call it. Like, but a lot of people are doing the calories in, calories out with like gummy worms, Pop-Tarts, and whatever. And it does work, but it's like, to what end? Like, what is your goal? If your goal is to live a longer, better life, better quality of life, ultimately it's going to be better doing whole food, healthier food. But there is certainly benefit to losing weight. So it's not like dismissible to say like it's worthless to do dirty or lazy keto. No, it has value. So I try not to. The worst thing to do is be judgmental to someone. Like if they can do the dirty, lazy keto and, whatever you want to call it, and they're losing weight, and that's step one into them getting into a healthier lifestyle, getting into like better clothes, feeling better about themselves, and then maybe finding a little bit more of a paleo type version of it down the road. Cool. Like I'm not judgmental. I don't care like really what, like if you use Splenda and, these kinds of things like sucralose, whatever, it's okay. Like, I mean, it's just a question of, trying to reduce the amount of foods like that, because I think you overeat. Like a lot of these desserty foods, processed foods, like ultra palatable foods, make you overeat. They override satiety signals. So if you can lose weight on them, that's cool. But a lot of people, they might get on keto and then they gain weight, and they're like, why am I gaining weight? Well, you were doing keto desserts and keto junk food the whole time. Like, and that stuff does override satiety. So
leptin, are you talking more leptin and ghrelin hormones?
Yeah, exactly. Leptin, ghrelin. There's neuropeptide Y. There's a couple different things, but yeah, exactly. Overriding your ability to feel full and satisfied.
Now, in different programs I've done, the Paul Chek's program, Holistic Lifestyle Coach, and I'm doing the FDN practitioner program, and they use the metabolic typing, oxidative stress, or not oxidative, fast oxidizer or a slow oxidizer. And then in nutritional therapy, the main goal is to get people to be balancing their blood sugar. So I think, it's bioindividuality, but also, what foods to make you feel full and satiate is what I kind of summarize it out as, is like, what macronutrient ratio does my body need based on my lifestyle, my exercise, my sleep, my stress. So I'm not hungry. I'm full and satisfied. I don't have those sugar cravings. I don't feel like I have to eat for, hours, and I feel energized. So what do you find, to start people, if everyone's individualized? So you said just start with real food, but do you feel like everyone has a different tolerance to have more carbs than another person and still be fat adapted?
100%. So there's probably, I would say 20 to 25% of the population that can eat any type of carb, be it high glycemic carbs all day long, and they deal with them very well. And for those people, all these recommendations about keto and whatever kind of goes out the window. Like they're just the people that are naturally lean and they can eat whatever they want. So that's maybe 25% of the population. But for the rest of us, the other 75%, when we have high glycemic carbs, there's more of a consequence to it. And we don't deal well with it. And over time, as we become more insulin insensitive, more glucose intolerant, and potentially less active with our lifestyle. If you're super active, you really can have anything you want. Like if you're if you imagine you're a locomotive going down the road and you've got this blazing fire, you can throw wood in it, you could throw coal in it, you could throw plastic in it. Anything's going to burn because it's just a roaring fire. But when your fire is smoldering embers, you have to be more careful with what you're throwing in there, right? Like now you need to throw in like a little bit of paper and get it going, and then a little kindling, and then a little firewood, and that's dry and, not pine, right? So you have to be more careful if you're more metabolically damaged. And it doesn't matter so much if you're an 18-year-old kid and you're playing Division I sports and you're working out 3 hours a day. But for the rest of us that are sitting in a chair 8 hours a day and looking at a computer and, grabbing a Monster and eating something at Bojangles or McDonald's, I mean, it has much more of an impact for us. Like the leeway is much smaller.
Yeah.
Another big impactor here is that with keto specifically is muscle mass. This is a big reason why like men have, it seems like much more tolerance for carb, like the amount of carbs and then the amount of protein that they can have, but still stay in ketosis. Because one, they might be more active, like we were just talking about, but two, they have more muscle mass, which has more GLUT4 translocation on it. You can have more glycogen stored in the muscle. So I've known bodybuilders that are 270 pounds that are ripped, and they can have 150 grams of carbs and stay in ketosis. Yeah. This is insane, right? Like it's mind blowing. But they're working out like 2 hours twice a day, doing splits. They have tons of muscle mass, and it just doesn't correlate to other people. Mm-hmm. And like maybe I can have 50 to 70 grams because I'm active and I've got, some muscle mass, whatever. But a woman, let's say, that's not as active, that has less muscle mass, she might like be struggling even at the 20, like she can't do the net carbs and like, whatever. So this is one of the biggest reasons why it's not equal across the board with like the amount of protein you can have and stay in ketosis and not do gluconeogenesis because of glycogen refilling and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But also the amount of carbs that you can have. So it's not fair for everyone, but that's the way it is. And one thing I would say is, work out, try and gain more lean body mass and stay active because that helps a lot. And that's where you can get into targeted ketogenic dieting and some of those things too.
Yeah. So the way to test, would you have people measure their ketones, blood sugar? I always find that might be, instead of guessing to know how much carbs you can tolerate based on your activity level and how to still stay fat and fat burning metabolism, to use like a keto measurement, blood sugar, ketones, blood test.
Yeah. Until like we have like the portable like RER, like where you can test your breath for like the what mode of fat burning you're in. Then I would say, using like glucose ketones, and especially looking at like that GKI that Jeff Volek worked on with Berta, like the glucose ketone index, I think is good because it pairs them together, because those numbers individually, it can be, again, so bio-individual that, your 1.5 of ketones in the plasma is very different than someone else's 1.5. Like you might be ketone resistant, you might be keto adapted, you might be somewhere in the middle, and it's just hard to say what that means. So I like to use one, the GKI, and two, also tie to it experiential. What are you feeling? And then, okay, I feel this way at 0.5. I feel this way at 1.5, because you will adapt over time. There's these MCT transporters that help with uptake of BHB, beta hydroxybutyrate. It's a ketone. So as you get more keto adapted, your numbers potentially will go down because you're using the ketones. They're not hanging around in the plasma anymore. So you can't just go by the flat numbers. You have to, I would say, compare the glucose to the ketones, and then also tie to it how you feel and track that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't stop and listen to how they feel and pay attention to that. Everyone's get so obsessed with, okay, how many carbs should I have, fat and protein, how their numbers are. And everyone was doing this, 5-day challenge the other week and posting their numbers and everything. It's like, okay, well, you don't really know what that means, I guess, is what you're saying, is that individually and looking at a little more in depth of where that fat or where your ketones, how they're being used and of how it's being uptaken.
Right. You don't look at like glucose like this. You don't like chase like a higher and higher glucose. Like, you
hopefully not.
Like 300, 400, 500, like 500's the goal or something. Like you ultimately want to be utilizing that fuel. It's not just about it hanging around and some number in the plasma. You want to be using it. So like, it's actually a good thing that over time you become more keto adapted and that number actually drops some.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm going to kind of switch gears more specifically for endurance athletes who we're trying to always learn and teach people how to become more fat adapted athletes. You're doing endurance sports like an Ironman, marathon, trail run, that we should be burning fat. And then we talk about how to optimize cell health. So mitochondria is what I like to talk about, and with that improving performance and also longevity, because I keep saying it's not just what your races are this year, but let's look ahead to the future. Are you, breaking yourself down from the inside out, that you're speeding up the aging process? So if we can kind of dive into oxidative stress and mitochondria health and what you've learned in that area and how to maybe biohack to improve your performance longevity.
Yeah. So I think the most important thing with aging, with all disease, and more important than keto and a bigger picture is there's mitochondrial function. And not only the way the mitochondria is functioning, but the number of mitochondria. And so when your mitochondria are dysfunctioning, then you get into states of insufficient cellular energy, ICE. And in the brain, it's also called brain energy gap with a lot of neurological conditions. And so it's important to realize that when you have this dysfunction and you're not getting enough energy, now you start getting some damage. And the damage to your body is in three main forms. It's in glycation, which is blood sugar damage. It's in inflammation and oxidation. And all those things are fine in and of themselves. They're transient, right? Blood sugar is allowed to go up and down. That's a good thing. Inflammation is allowed to go up and down. That's a good thing. That's part of our immune system. That's part of wound healing, etc. And oxidation is a good thing too. Damage has signals that, like when you work out, that says, let's repair this and make them stronger. Okay, so all those things are good. It's when they're chronically elevated that you run into problems that are associated with all disease states and biological aging. So I like to think about these three things. And I really deeply believe we could change the state of medicine if we were looking at these three labs for maybe like $100 once or twice a year. I could tell you your likelihood of getting all diseases and your likelihood of aging more biologically than chronologically. So if we were looking at CRP for inflammation, if we were looking at hemoglobin A1C for glycation, and we were looking at maybe oxidized LDL for oxidation, we could see how your mitochondria are doing. We could see basically the state your body is in. And that's a huge thing. And we know that keto provides substrate, which is like where some people get all this energy and clarity and from, is because it's providing ketones for fuel in basically a metabolically impaired or damaged scenario where glucose is not being taken up well and being utilized well. So ketones are bridging that energy gap. And ketones also help with mitochondrial biogenesis. So not only does it help, it bypasses what's called the secondary complex of the electron transport chain to help with the energy, but also it's helping to create more mitochondria. And same thing happens with fasting as well. So those are both helpful to getting more cellular energy.
So our goal is to increase the health and the quantity of our mitochondria to optimize their function, to help our performance, because it creates energy, and for longevity, because the more damaged mitochondria we have, the more increased signs of aging we're going to have. So
exactly.
Increasing our mitochondria, the ways you're doing it, you're saying getting lab testing 2-3 times a year to get your oxidative stress, your A1C and the CRP, but then kind of biohacking to improve our mitochondria, the strength of them includes fasting, like intermittent fasting, or how long do we need to fast to improve our mitochondria?
I think that it gets oversimplified with the, you have to be over 24 hours to get autophagy. It's not that simple. It depends what your diet is. It depends what your exercise is, bioindividuality. It's not just autophagy isn't just on or off. It actually happens a lot. So it's not quite that simple. And having coffee doesn't necessarily break it, or like all these crazy things.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's so much more complex than that. But the deeper dive is actually mitophagy, where it's cleaning up the mitochondria, which is even more important. So fasting, I think it's good to do from time to time, because I think this is how in days gone by, like how we used to get in ketosis a lot. We used to have high fiber foods. We used to have resistant starches because we'd eat a raw potato or we'd eat a green banana. Everything wasn't ripe and perfect and sweet and processed and Gatorade and Coca-Cola and whatever. And then we'd also be in a caloric deficit when we were hunting, when we were preparing, when we were starving, not eating food for a few days, just looking for food. And I think it would have been common. I think what was uncommon maybe is getting in ketosis through a nutritional ketogenic diet, which I think is more of a biohack. Maybe Eskimos, maybe certain populations that ate high-fat foods, like because they were eating walrus and seal and whale and whatever, okay, maybe. But I think a lot of the other cultures were getting ketosis often from just not eating all day every day, from exercising a lot. And again, exercising back then was called work or hunting. Like they didn't go to a gym and they didn't fast, they starved, but they got into ketosis through these means.
Well, it's kind of the ancestry background too. Don't we want to also look at, my ancestors, we came from Northern Europe. So if you look at the genetic testing reports, they'll say you do better with, like me, I do better with the higher meat, more Northern European foods, versus if I came from Asia or South America or south of the equator, it's going to be different than north of the equator foods, and how I can process those and metabolize those fuels and still not spike up my blood sugar by having just fruit, and other people can be fine with it.
Yeah, there's genetics, there's environment, and then epigenetics, which is kind of the blend of the two, and where we're talking about that quite a bit now. It used to be like you're a product of your genetics and your environment, but now it's your product of your genetics, your epigenetics, and your environment. And so that's the way I like to think about it is, yeah, you do have genetics plays a role for sure, like your ancestry and what they ate, how they exercised, their blood markers and things like that. But you do adapt over time. And we know, like, specifically if you eat a ketogenic diet, like there's a lot of adaptations that will take place at 2 weeks, at 6 months, at 2 years. That some of these changes take place over long periods of time. Some happen very quickly, but there are changes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find it. I always think I was so metabolically damaged for years eating this high carb diet, thinking I was being so healthy growing up, high school and college. And I thought, I was just, the calorie counter, everything was fat free. I didn't really do protein because I was afraid of animal meat, eating animals, and then just ate vegetables and unlimited bagels because it was on the bottom of the food pyramids. I would have I think 6 bagels a day in college, and that's how I survived. And just that was no calories, no fat, cream cheese on it. And so I think just eating 99% carbohydrate diet for so many years, thinking I was so nutritious that it really screws you up. So like you're saying, the environment and how metabolically damaged you are from how we used to eat before we make this switch. And I know I don't tolerate a lot of carbohydrates. I'll get a headache right away in a short amount of time, but it's having something without the right balance of fat and protein. But it's so individualized, like we keep saying, bioindividuality is the key. And I think everyone's looking for the answers. How do I lose fat weight and feel better? And I think, the summary, it depends, is always a response that there isn't one size fits all, and there's not just exact numbers, but we have a kind of a starting point, as you said, beginning of the show, talking about eating real food to start, and then adjust those macros based on how you feel and pay attention to that. And that doesn't cost money to buy any devices or anything. Just pay attention to your energy level and your mood and how your body feels. And I think that's just a great way to get started.
Yeah, I think one important component that gets overlooked in terms of the individuality is the mindset, the mental component, the psychological component. You have to meet someone where they're at, and sometimes asking them to make radical change just depends on the personality. Some people love to make radical change, and that's the only way they can do it. Some people, it's small steps. So, I've talked about this, that just going from 6 Cokes a day to 2 Cokes a day is a big win. Like, you don't have to push your agenda on someone else or what you're doing on someone else because it works for you. You have to help them celebrate the wins of just getting healthier. And if they stick with it, then that's wonderful. You don't want them to lose a bunch of weight in 12 weeks and then gain a bunch of weight right after that. And or just give up on this stuff because it's too hard. If it's too hard for them, then listen to them and help them. Then just make small changes. And as long as they're keeping those small changes, that's great.
Yeah, I for sure believe in that, especially being a personal trainer for 25 years that, plus that. But you have to really learn that each client, that's a huge step for them to make this change that you might go, they rode their bike 6 miles where we'll go for a short ride is 30 miles that you have to go, okay, that's huge for them, and celebrate that victory and, set small goals. So I like that. Who's it? Dr. Tom O'Brien in his past 2 books I was reading a while ago said base hits make a home run. And I always like that saying, is just create one step at a time, base hits, get a home run instead of always trying to get that home run. And I just love that analogy that he shared.
Yeah, that's a good one.
What I was going to ask you, the kind of last question, talk about before we wrap up on hormetic stressors. And I know you talk a lot about that and a lot of biohacking shows and seminars we listen to, the cold therapy and infrared sauna. And if we're looking at for performance gains and longevity for endurance athletes to improve our mitochondria as a big picture, what do you suggest people do to improve the mitochondria, as we're saying, but with different hormetic stressors?
Yeah, exactly. So I think one big one is metformin. You might have heard of as a glucose disposal agent that's really good with type 2 diabetes, but it's been found to have a mild stress on the mitochondria in a positive way. And it seems like berberine, the herbal version of metformin, if you will, works in the exact same way and helps with glycation, reducing inflammation, anti-aging, etc. So that's why I tell everyone that I think that's the most important supplement you could possibly take is berberine.
Good, because I take that every day. So I got one.
And some other ones, along the lines of what we were talking about before with inflammation and oxidation as well. I think with inflammation, it would be good to take curcumin, CBD potentially. And with oxidation, just taking some good antioxidants like pterostilbene, resveratrol, EGCG. And that can be just from having green tea, coffee, red wine, blueberries on occasion, which you can have on a ketogenic diet, a small amount of berries.
In season though, local in season, not the ones from Mexico. I've been doing my berries lately because it's like I have 2 months a year I can get them. So you got to eat by the season. I just find what's local.
Yeah. And then like you were saying, I think doing different hot and cold therapies can be very helpful as, again, positive stressors, hormetic stressors. And then even the combination of the two called contrasting is even better. So that creates like a larger delta, if you will, in temperature and what you can withstand. But with cold, they've shown that there's a lot of benefits mitochondrially, especially activating brown adipose tissue, which is basically a unique form of adipose tissue. There's only about 5 ounces on your body, mostly around your collarbone. And it creates thermogenesis from being mitochondrial dense. It's brown because of the mitochondria in the fat, in these special fat cells. And it also increases growth factors, recovery factors. And then on the opposite end, they've shown with heat that you increase testosterone, growth hormone, insulin sensitivity, changes in antidiuretic hormone. So basically, I think, going this wide range of hot and cold is helpful. And then, another thing that doesn't get mentioned a lot, is that your physiologic ability to deal with stressors helps your mental ability to deal with stressors. Mm-hmm. And on the mental side, it's called stoicism. Like that, the stuff that doesn't kill you makes you stronger, essentially. Like that the obstacle is the way. That you can deal with stress better as a result of taking on these physiologic stresses. So there's the person that's constantly complaining about how cold it is in the room, or the person that's saying, oh my God, I'm so hot. Where's they like to be regulated, thermoregulation, like we are in our homes now, where everything's 67 degrees, 24 hours a day. This isn't normal. This isn't what we're adapted for, but it's the new adaptation. And so you have to be cognizant of that the more regulated you get, the more tight you get with anything physiologically, then the less ability you have to deal with things that are on the outside of that spectrum that are quote unquote difficult. So it's something to think about.
Yeah, I've been learning that a lot lately in the last year with Ben Greenfield at his Keon Coach program we started. And it's just so much the endurance athlete, I think, needs to add more hormetic stressors because of, we're doing this long distance stuff that's not natural. 45 minutes is long enough, not going for 3-5 hour, all this endurance stuff on top of a very busy lifestyle. So what I'm trying to share is that chronic stress, how impacts your ability to burn fat, optimize health and performance and longevity. But if people are still going to do those long events on top of, working full time, having a family, trying to have a social life, they're burning the candles at both ends, and how we can coach people to do what they want to do, do a race because they want to do it for different reasons, but how to do it without killing and breaking yourself down. I think it's a tough part. It's why are you doing Ironman? It's kind of stupid to do when you don't have time for it, but people still do it. But it's just how to create that awareness of you're not helping yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where like some of the biohacks could be helpful is like not only the hormetic stressors, but looking at like things like HRV with your heart rate variability, or looking at things like we were just talking about, like these mitochondrial labs. If you could, maybe if you had a continual glucose monitor, like over a couple of weeks, you could look at how your glucose is going up and down, looking at ketones, looking at inflammation potentially. But yeah, I think that would be very helpful.
Have you worn one of the glucose monitors?
I haven't yet. I'm actually looking at getting one soon, so I can try.
I wonder how like putting it on there just seems like cooking it up seems a little scary to me.
No, it's not too bad, I don't think.
So I know we're out of time, but where can people find you and get more information on your amazing stuff that I love learning about and hearing from you? So to share yourself with everybody.
Okay, yes, absolutely. So ShawnWells.com, ShawnWells. And then on Instagram at ZoneHalo, ZoneHalo. And same with Twitter and Facebook.
And then do you do coaching for people, consultations? Kind of what do you do besides?
I stay pretty busy. I do podcasts. I try and teach on a broader level. But when people reach out to me, I usually just help them at no cost. Just whatever I can answer that's answerable fairly quickly. I try and respond on, Messenger or Instagram DMs with an audio message. But yeah, I'll help anyone out.
Nice work. Paying it forward. All right, guys. Well, I'm so happy to share this podcast with you guys. I've just really loved what Shawn had to say in his conferences. So if you can ever find him at a different conference coming up, follow him on social media. He has a lot of followers and he's great information sharing different shows too. So thank you for doing what you're doing and following your passion, purpose, and mission.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for listening to the Whole Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at wholeathletepodcast.com. You can help us continue and grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and see you next time.